This episode is brought to you by One World Empowered. Hey there, tired mama. Do you wish you could push a reset button on your energy? Like, do you want to keep up with those Energizer bunnies that are running around you all day? I know. I feel ya. Coffee can only do so much. Well, don't you worry. I've got you covered. Now, just imagine a community of mamas who know the struggle and are working together to harness and reclaim their energy. We're talking about a true community of mamas who get it. Daily practices to jumpstart your days, accountability partners, group coaching calls to ground and recenter you throughout the 28 days. Does this sound like the exact dose of medicine you need in order to feel 100% again? If so, this program is exactly what you need if you want to be more present with your kiddos, if you think a new routine will help you maximize your time and you enjoy having an accountability partner to help you with developing that new routine and those new habits, if you'd like to increase your patience and energy all while reducing your stress and anxiety, and if you think it would be amazing to have an understanding community of mamas who get it and are on the same path towards healing. Mama, today is the day you choose you and level up. Come join our 28-day energetic reset for moms by visiting www.oneworldempowered.com/workwithme and click the Learn More option next to the Energetic Reset program, or just scroll down and click the link in my show notes below. I can't wait to meet you and witness you step into your full potential. See you there, Mama. You're listening to the Empower to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dina T, and I'm so excited to take you on a journey through stories of everyday experts as we share the ways we've harnessed the power inside us to improve the quality of our lives and the health of our minds. We're so excited to have you here with us and hope you feel inspired and empowered to heal. Hello, you beautiful souls. Today, I am interviewing a powerhouse of a woman named Alethea Fourlas. She goes by Allie, and she is an old friend of mine who has more recently become like family in the past year. And as I've observed her journey unfold, I could not help but to reach out to her and invite her to be on this podcast. And I got to tell you, this will not be the only time that she's on here because she has so many facets to her story that are worth a sharing. They're worthy of a platform to learn from. And so today I'm going to be interviewing Allie about the life and the loss of her daughter. I want to warn you guys that this is a sensitive subject and may be triggering to some. Allie is going to share her journey through navigating fertility struggles and a surprise high-risk pregnancy. This pregnancy that she had, it led to the unimaginable. She had to make decisions on if she was going to choose her daughter's life or her own life. And ultimately, she chose to do whatever she could to birth her daughter safely for the both of them. And upon her baby girl Calista's birth, Allie discovered additional medical concerns and conditions that her daughter had that led ultimately to multiple surgeries and her daughter's death. Allie shares her healing journey after losing Calista and navigating day-to-day life after this loss. She's not only found powerful perspectives that she nourishes daily in her journey of navigating grief, but she's also stepped into a journey of empowering others. And that piece of this puzzle is so inspiring to me. I am a mama and I could not imagine anything happening to my sweet boy. And the fact that she continues every day to find reasons to live and to cherish her life is just beyond astounding to me. And so, without further ado, I bring you Alethea Fourlas. Hey there, Allie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
We're so excited to learn from you. So, something that I want to kind of prepare folks to hear is a little disclaimer before we get started, because this might be more of a triggering episode for some folks. We're going to be speaking about infant and child loss, and Allie's going to be sharing her story. So, Allie's actually one of my friends dating back Oh, girl, when was it? We were back in grad school
Yeah,
like
like 10, 11
10,
years
10,
ago.
11 years ago. It was a while
Right.
ago. And we met in we both have our masters in social work, and we met in our I think it was like a summer class. We did this super
Yeah.
fast 1 year grad school thing. And during that time, Allie was going through so much in her life, but it started a friendship with us. And I'm eager for you to kind of share with the world kind of the journey that you've been on and how the most painful, unimaginable things that you've experienced in your life, how you've navigated through them and found ways to heal. Because what you've gone through, I don't think people talk about it enough. I think it's more common than we know it is, and then I think it's something that is taboo and scary to bring up in conversation with folks, and so I'm so eager for you to share.
Yes, yes, thank you. And I agree with you 100%. I think we don't talk about this stuff enough. And I think when
Yeah.
people experience loss, especially of a child, like they're scared to talk about it, or, they're afraid of how it will be received by others. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yes. So, I don't know if you wanna just maybe start by sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey and kind
Yeah.
of why you're called to be an advocate in this area.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. So, I guess for me, I have three brothers and I grew up with a big, diverse family. So I always wanted to be a mom and I always wanted to have a family. So that's like, since I was a kid, I was like, oh, being a mom is so cool, right?
Yeah.
All the crazy things that come with being a mom. But yeah. So I've always felt that way. And when I was in high school, I mean, probably the majority of my friends were teen moms. So that kind of
Wow.
deferred me from wanting to be a mom then because I
Yeah.
16 and 17-year-old friends with these little babies that wouldn't stop crying.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So I went to college and then, grad school where we met. And we took a lot of those, how to work with children classes and social work. And I think that encouraged me back to wanting to be a mom, right?
Mm.
Strongly about advocating, um, just talking about child loss or infant loss, because I don't think enough people talk about it. And for those of you who don't know me, I am a very open book and I really don't feel the need to hide anything or sugarcoat anything. So I think I am the perfect person to bring it up. And you know, I think that it just needs more light. People need to know that it's okay to talk about somebody's child. And if they don't want you to talk about their child that has passed, they can just say that to you like, hey, I appreciate your concern, but I don't really want to talk about that or whatever. Everybody's different. Everybody feels differently about it. I personally love to talk about Calista. I think it keeps her living, it keeps her
Yeah.
alive in my mind. So,
And tell us about your journey a little bit. So, Callista is your baby girl,
yes,
and you gave birth to her, and she passed away shortly after that, right?
right, right. So, my fiance Jamie and I have been together for almost 6 years. We've been engaged for, I guess, almost 3 years. So I was like, we should start trying to figure out if we can get pregnant because I know he can because he has a son, right? So I know he's able to do that. But I have never like even thought like about this. So we started trying. This was probably in the beginning of 2018 or late 2017, and nothing happened. Right? I mean, I have been on control
Mm.
a long time, probably since I was like 16 years old. So I thought, oh my God, is it that? So I decided to go to my gynecologist, and they were like, no, that shouldn't affect it. If you want to, you can go to a fertility clinic. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, that seems pretty scary. I'll go anyway.
Mm.
So my insurance paid for some of that, but they don't normally pay for those services. So it was a lot of money out of pocket. But we went. So we had 5 sessions of IUI. I don't remember what that stands for. Basically, intrauterine, I don't know, implantation or something. But they basically take the sperm and they put it in you, and you take medications, and you have like a trigger shot, so they get you ready so you can get pregnant basically with your partner, but at their clinic. So we had did that 5 times and it wasn't successful. So we stopped doing that at the end of 2018 when we decided that, I guess we're just not going to be parents. Like maybe we'll do foster care.
Wow, Allie, just for a second, like, holy smoke. So you just dropped, I had no idea that you went to a fertility clinic and went through
Yes.
all of that. And I think of people on their journey of trying to get pregnant, trying to create a family of their own, and that is oftentimes it is an avenue that people go to, and that's not an easy avenue to choose, right? Like that's just the fact that you face not being able to get
Right.
pregnant how you thought you would, and that you need assistance can be almost a grieving step in and all by itself, right? That's huge.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we see people like Kim Kardashian or whoever celebrities or maybe you have friends that go to the fertility clinic and bam they're pregnant like no issues at all. But that's not accurate. Like most people who have IUI, it's not
Wow.
successful. I think the success rate is like 10% maybe. It might be even lower than that. So it's people pay a couple grand each time to go. I don't get pregnant. I mean, I think that part in itself, like you said, is just so much for women, for fathers, for families, whoever is trying to have a baby. I think that that is so stressful. So yeah, I think that
Yeah,
that
and
part of it in itself is
that's not
already
easy on
stressful.
your
You get
body
your hopes
either. So
up and then you're
emotionally
just
it's
let
not
down.
easy, but I think like physically navigating the process
Oh my
of
god.
that, it's not natural or normal, and it's like that feeling one with your body, that's got to be that disassociation from it's got to be a whole thing to kind of tackle.
Of course, of course. I 100% agree with that. And for me, my biggest like what got me kind of through that part of this journey was just thinking like I had to tell myself, like, you're doing this because this is what you want and this is what your partner wants, but it may not work out and you have to be okay with like not getting what you want.
So you already started like kind of priming your brain, right? Like
Yeah.
readying yourself for the good or the bad.
Right, right. And I think, you know me, so I've been through so much prior to this that I really kind of became that person that kind of thought that way. I mean, almost like glass half empty, right? Because when you get your hopes up and you get excited, when you don't get what you want, whether it's a job or a baby or, a new pair of shoes, whatever, and it doesn't happen, like you tend to be more upset than you would have been if you talked yourself through it, like, hey, it might not work out the way you want it to.
Yeah. And I've always seen you, and this is just my experience with you, Allie. Like the first time I met you, I think it was my very first class in grad school, and I was young. I
Well,
I
were you
started
21 yet?
no, I was 20 years old. I was this like young little girl sitting in this like
Yeah,
summer class for my first class of grad school, and I was so quiet. I'm an introvert at
you
heart.
were.
I'm just this meek little like quiet person at that stage of my life, and I'm still an introvert today. But and then here comes Allie. Like you were full blown like personality and energy, and you felt so welcoming and warm and safe for me, right? Like holy smoke, somebody who has no idea what they're doing here their first day either, but like they're just themselves and they're going through the motions of it and figuring it out. And so when I hear you say like glass half empty type of person, I'm like, what? You're like, even like despite everything you've gone through in your life, I have
Yeah,
always seen you as like a bubbly glass half full type of person.
yeah. I try to be, and I appreciate you saying all that. I really try to be as positive as I can. But I think, with the age and with experience, I think we all kind of, become more ourselves, right? Like when I first met you, like you said, you were kind of shy, like super introverted, you were figuring it out. You were young, right? But now you're a mom, right? Like you have a husband, you have a job, like you're a different person. You're way more confident now, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, it was like, I don't know, maybe I was like overly confident when I was younger, but now like am able to take a step back and just kind of say, hey, it's not always great, and that's okay. Like, I think honestly that part of my personality, right? That positive energy that I do carry, I think has helped me through a lot of situations, particularly this one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I don't know, that's a tidbit of advice that I feel like people can walk away with is mindset matters, right? Like, even
For
if you feel
sure.
like it's you putting on, like, I was overly confident, whatever it is, your mindset matters to get you through tough stuff.
I agree. I agree. I 100% agree. Like, even if you just put that face on, right, or that hat on of confidence and, positivity to get you through the day, and then you come home and crash and you binge eat ice cream and you take a hot shower and cry, like, that's okay because you made it through the majority of your day and you did all right, like, day by day.
I love that you just took the judgment out of it, right? So
Well,
we
yeah.
are humans who judge every single turn of, like, I am, at least. I battle that
Mhm.
every single day is, okay, am I going to like evaluate how I did today, or am I just going to look at it and say, like, I did and I gave it my all and that's what matters, right? I
Right.
don't have to weigh it. If I go and eat a pint of ice cream on the couch binge watching Netflix, who cares, right? If I
Right.
accomplish something in my day that I am proud of. And not to say I should
Right.
binge eat ice cream and watch Netflix every day, but it's stop
Right.
evaluating and judging every single thing that we do, right? Because that messes with that mindset.
Oh, 100%. I think if you're already down on yourself, like anything anybody else says to you, even if it's not supposed to be negative, like that's like you're not helping yourself,
Yeah.
right? When I lost Calista, people would say, "Are you okay?" And I would say, "Well, not today, but maybe tomorrow,"
Mm,
because you're not. And I think that's life in general. Like every day is not flowers and rainbows. Sometimes you just want to scream the F word and punch people. I mean, you can't, but internally you can think about it that way. Hey, like you sent me the sign. It's okay to feel it all at once, and I have it in my office right next to me, and that is the whole truth. Like it's okay to have like all these feelings rushing into you and to feel overwhelmed. And take a moment and like deal with it how you can in that time. But just remember, like it's just today. It's not going to be forever.
yeah. It's so powerful. And I want to ask, like, if you can go into the story of your daughter a little bit here. So
Yes,
you
of
didn't
course.
get pregnant through those attempts through
No,
in vitro. So how did you get, like, was it naturally you were surprised pregnant? What was that journey like?
right. So yeah, we didn't get pregnant through the fertility clinic and the IUIs and stuff. And they basically told us like, hey, we can't help you anymore unless you're going to do IVF. And IVF is so expensive. I mean, it ranges from like I think when I saw the people work like $40,000 to like hundreds of $1,000s, depending on how many times you have to do it, who's going to carry your baby. Like there's so many things that go into that. So we were like, no, we can't do it. And we had a couple weeks where we were just really sad that like we're not going to be parents, like birth parents to anyone together, and it is what it is. So we stopped trying. I did not go back on birth control because I thought there's no way I can get pregnant, right? We've already tried for like 2 years and we had help of doctors and we didn't get pregnant. So I was like, you know what, we'll just stop, like we'll just live our normal lives, we'll start planning our wedding, and that's what it is. So then it was April of 2019, yes, 19, yes. So April of 2019, I had this weird feeling. So this is like a little TMI, but I've always had strange menstrual cycles. Like I wouldn't get my period for like 4 weeks, and then I'd have it for 21 days. So it was like all this crazy stuff, which is why I originally went on birth control. Side note, but anyway, so I decided that like one day I wake up and I'm like, I had some late bleeding, like some light bleeding earlier in April, but then I never got like a real period. I was like, this is so weird. Like normally I just bleed forever. Like what's happening? So I said to Jamie, who's my fiance, by the way, I don't know if I said that earlier. Hey, something's going on. Like this isn't right because I'm normally like so wacky. Like this is too normal. Like something's going on. So he's like, yeah, I don't know. That's strange. Like, what do men know about periods, right? So I was like, whatever. Like, I have this whole box of like pregnancy tests and ovulation kits. So I was like, I'll just take a pregnancy test and see what it says. Like, I'm probably not pregnant. I'm like 98% sure I'm not. So I peed on it and it was positive. So I go downstairs and I'm like, Jamie, can you tell me what this says? I didn't believe it. Like, I thought for sure, like, I'm crazy and that does not say positive. So positive. And I'm like, no. I was like, I'm taking another one. So I took another one. While I'm taking another one, he texts his sister and he's like, Allie's pregnant. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, why are you telling people already? So the next day, that one was positive too. The next day, I called my doctor at like 7 a.m., my PCP, and I was like, hey, so I think I'm pregnant, but I need a blood test because I don't believe these pregnancy tests. And they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I went and got that lab work done at like 7:30 in the morning. And yes, it was positive. So I was like ecstatic and overwhelmed with excitement. I was just like, I mean, there are no words. Like I could cry just talking about it right now. I was so happy. Like it was just, I mean, like a dream come true, right? Like I have a master's degree. I've been written in newspaper articles. I have all these great things that have happened. But like getting pregnant with my daughter was like the best achievement ever.
I love
I'm
it.
really excited. Yeah. So that's how we got pregnant and how we found out we were pregnant. So yeah, then we, went through the normal pregnancy stuff and everything looked good in the beginning. Um, no issues. And then I think when I was about maybe 18 weeks, so I was a high risk pregnancy. You know, um what was I, 33, 32 then, 31 then. But I have a lot of health issues. So I was high risk. So they were like, yeah, the OBGYN was like, we need to refer you to maternal fetal medicine, like the high risk OBGYN. I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't really understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing them all the time. I mean, I was in there like every other week. It was like a lot. And they realized that Calista was not growing. Like she was like 2 weeks behind in growth. So I was like, they're like, that could be normal. Like we'll give it some time and like we'll revisit it. So I was like, okay, like I've never been pregnant before. I'll go with you, whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll follow you. Right? So, I think it was the middle of July. They called me. I had just had some blood work done, and they said you need to come into the hospital right now. We want to do like an ultrasound on you today. And I think I was a Friday maybe, but I was supposed to go for like my ultrasound, my 20-week ultrasound on that Monday. So I was like, oh, okay, it's a little early, whatever. So I told my boss, hey, I'm just going to take this appointment, take PTO for this appointment. I'll be back later. She was like, okay. So I go to the hospital. They do the ultrasound and they're like, yeah, we're admitting you for bed rest because your baby's not growing and your lab work is not looking good.
So at that point in time, you had this ultrasound that you thought was just the typical 20-week ultrasound, and
Right.
this bomb is dropped on you. Your baby is not growing. Like, what
Right.
in the world? What was that like for you? What did you experience in that moment?
So immediately, like, I'm crying, right? Because I like to know what's going on and I'm anxious when I don't know what's going on. So immediately I'm crying and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, what is going on? Like, is she going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they're telling me, like, we don't know. We need to do more, like, work with what's going on and we got to watch you. That's why we're putting you on bed rest. So, I was excited that they caught it when they did. Because I was only like 20 weeks. So I was excited about that. But I was also like, what the hell? Like bed rest is not good, right? And I'm at bed rest in the hospital.
So you literally went to this appointment and didn't leave.
Right, right. I was there on bed rest for almost 4 weeks, I think. So it was a lot. It was scary. It was like, I mean, that was probably the scariest thing I've ever been through because you don't know and each day is different.
Mm.
Um, So, I mean, I was so scared. Like, I thought, oh my God, I just need to keep this baby growing inside of me for like, 8 more weeks. Can we make it to 8 more weeks? Can we make it to the first week of October? Her due date was November 25th. But I'm like, can we make it just anywhere closer to her due date? Like anything. So when I got admitted to the hospital for bed rest, they immediately took me downstairs and put like a temporary dialysis catheter on my neck. And that was a whole mess because they didn't like stitch it correctly. So I had lost all this blood. Right. So I got diagnosed with chronic kidney disease when I was 23, I think, or 22, around that time. So I've always had bad kidneys. I was level 4. There's 5 levels of kidney disease for chronic kidney disease. I was level 4 for a very long time. So my kidneys were only functioning at like 20%, 25%, somewhere in between there. And so like before we started trying to get pregnant, just a side note, I did ask the kidney doctor about it. I was like, hey, like, is it okay if we get pregnant? Like, what does that look like? And the kidney doctor's advice was basically, we have a lot of women who have the same kidney disease that you have, to have successful pregnancies and are fine. We have women who are on dialysis that are pregnant and they make it. So he didn't really say yes or no, that it's okay. He just shared that, people do this and they make
Hmm.
it. So I think I was naive in thinking I could be one of those people, right? I think I should have. I struggle with this because I'm like, having getting pregnant and having Calista is like my favorite part of my life. But like, I wish I knew everything that was gonna happen, right? Because then maybe I could have done something differently. I don't know. It's hard to look back and think that way because you just hurt your own feelings.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think that's something we can all relate to if it's, I mean, not related to the degree of what you're describing, but there's things that we go through in our life that we reflect back on. Every human does. And they say, like,
right,
if I would have just known that, I would have done something different, even if doing something different wouldn't have changed the outcome, right? But the thought
right,
or feeling like maybe I could have had control, maybe I could have
right,
played a role in this. And that,
right,
I mean, I hear that and I normalize it. I do it in my own life. We all do it. And then I see it and I'm like, dang, like I'm discrediting myself too when I do that. Like,
right,
yes, I always want to do better. And like, I don't always have to look for my faults and put blame, right?
right. No, I agree. I agree. I agree. I think everybody does that, right? We look back and how could we have done that differently? And even in conversations, right? Like you talk to people and then later you're like, oh, I should have said this
Yeah.
or I should have said that. And we can't go back in time. So I try hard not to think about that because I know there's nothing really I could have had control over. But I think that's part of the reason I have anxiety is because I want to control everything and I want not, I don't know if control is the right word, but I want to be able to handle what's going to happen and know what's coming to a degree, right? Like I don't want to be blindsided. Like I want to know, like, hey, we're gonna get pregnant. You're gonna be high risk. You're gonna have this baby, and your baby may not make it. Like I wish somebody would have said those exact words to me before I got pregnant, but nobody could have said that. Nobody could predict the future. Nobody could have said to me that, like, yeah, you're gonna get pregnant, but your baby's probably not gonna make it, right?
Mhm.
Like nobody predict that. They're not God or Buddha, whoever you believe in as your higher power. Like nobody can tell you that. So I think it's the not knowing part is stressful.
Absolutely. And so you said you went into the hospital and how long were you
Yes.
admitted on bed rest?
Yeah. So I got the catheter in my neck. I was there for I think 3.5 weeks total. I have it written down somewhere, but I was there for a long time. So I got admitted, I think it was July 26th. And then Calista was born on August
And
18th.
how many weeks were you when she was born?
She was almost 26 weeks, but her growth was 2 weeks behind. So herself, her body, her physical was like 24 weeks.
And did your body go into natural labor? Were they like trying to stop the labor throughout those weeks you were in the hospital?
No, it was not natural labor. I had to have a C-section. I was actually like under. I wasn't awake for the C-section. In fact, when I woke up, like the day she was born, I went into the emergency room, the operating room at like 8 in the morning, and I don't even remember the first time that I saw her outside of my belly because I was on so many drugs
Mm.
from being under that I don't remember that. Like I just remember waking up at some point in the bed and Jamie was there, my mom was there, my cousin and my best friend were there. And I just remember like the nurse coming in every like half hour to push on my belly. They want to get all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
out. And just clicking the pain button because I was like, this hurts like a mother. Like this is horrible. But I was like not really conscious. Like I was like in and out of like being awake. And at one point I remember waking up and looking like, why are all you people in here? Like and why are you people here? Like they weren't a part of it or anything, you
What were
know?
you told right before you had, like, how did they tell you you needed to go and have a C-section now? Like, what was that
Right.
messaging?
So probably a couple days before I had her, I kept having like heartburn and really bad indigestion. And they said that's a sign of preeclampsia. Like you're preeclamptic. Like we want to keep this baby in you as long as possible. However, we don't want to lose you either. So my doctor that delivered the baby, his name's Dr. Tressler. He's retired now, but he has been a high risk OBGYN for years. I mean, probably 40 years. But he was so amazing and he cried with us and prayed with us and was basically like, I really want to save your daughter and I want her to survive, but like, you are my patient. And I understood that. But Jamie really struggled to like accept that. I think he understood it, because he loves me, but he was like, but what about the baby too? So I think for a doctor, that's a hard place to be, right? Because for me, like I would have rather had my daughter be here alive and thriving and myself be gone. Like that's how I felt at that moment. Like I don't care about me, like I care about my baby. Like I want her to be happy and I want her to live her life to the fullest. Like I'm okay if I don't make it. And they were all looking at me like, you're crazy. Like we need you here. And I'm like, yeah, you're selfish. Go away.
Wow, Allie. So you
Yeah.
literally were facing a moment of, if you don't go into the operating room, you could die. And if you
Right.
do go into that operating room, your daughter might not make it.
Right, right. There was a lot happening. And I think I had a lot of faith in the doctor. I mean, when I first was admitted and on bed rest, one of the doctors came in and said, listen, we can try our hardest, but we're not God. Like straight up from the gate was like, we'll try to help you and keep your baby safe. But your baby could die. Like she did not sugarcoat it at all. And, looking back at it, I appreciate that. Like I like that she was so straightforward. But in that moment, I was so pissed off. I'm like, why would you say that? Why would you tell me that? Right? Like, I don't want to hear that.
You're like, only
But
good vibes. Come on.
right, right. That was a lot. It was a lot. But yeah, so basically the night before I had her, so the 17th into the 18th of August, I was like having the worst heartburn and they kept giving me like Tums and all these medications to try to help the heartburn. And my blood pressure was so high. And they're like, listen, you need to have this baby today. Like, it's really not an option. And I remember being like, okay, let's do it. Like, let's go for it. Like, if it, whatever happens, happens. So I was upset because they told me I had to be, put under to have the baby because of everything. When you're asleep or when you're put under, or whatever you want to call it, they can control things better. So I was like, okay, but I wanted Jamie to be in the room and he wasn't allowed. So I was very upset about that because I wanted him to be a part of that, like this is his child too. So that was really like hard for me and I know it was hard for him. Um, so yeah, so we had the baby. I think she was born, I have it written down somewhere, but I think she was born at like 10 o'clock or 11:45 in the morning on the 18th of August, 2019. Again, I don't remember the first time I saw her, which that still like blows my mind that I don't remember that. Apparently they took me up there like shortly after I like had some recovery time, but I do not remember
That's
that.
so
So
crazy to think about, too. Like, you met your daughter
right,
before you remember meeting your daughter.
right, right. It's like where was I in my mind? But I guess I was so like doped up. I don't remember. But Jamie saw her first. She came out of the operating room. Now, when she was born, she was only 1 pound. And 11 inches long. So she was very tiny. I mean, think about it. Most babies are like 6 to 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Super little. I mean, so tiny. My one brother calls her baby pound cake because she was just so little.
And if you think of, like, tell us what that was like. So she was born and she wasn't fully developed in many ways, right?
Right, right, right. So she really still had some pretty like her skin was pretty like transparent or whatever you call it, translucent. I don't know the
Hmm.
word to use. So you could see like a lot of her veins and stuff like that. You could definitely see like she had all her features. Like she looked like a baby. She was just tiny. But she had a lot of hair. The doctor or the nurses in the NICU said to me, this preemie baby is like the first baby we saw with this much hair. I mean, she has so much hair. Um, it was interesting. Like, it was so exciting to see her. Like when I finally saw her on the outside and remember seeing her, I remember just being like, "Wow, this is the most beautiful baby ever." Like, and I'm sure every parent thinks that, right? You're like, "Oh my god, my baby's perfect." So I was super excited, and we had a great team of nurses working with her, and she did really well for a while. I mean, the first week or two she was in there, she was doing really well. She finally got some breast milk in her, like she was growing a little more. Um, then basically what happened was something was wrong with her bowel. Basically, she hadn't pooped for days. I mean, I don't think she pooped until like she was 10 days old. And so her stomach kept getting bigger and bigger and like swollen. I mean, it looked like it was gonna pop. It was so scary. And finally they said to me like, "Hey, we need to like vent her stomach, basically." Oh my, sorry, James came in and scared me.
What does that
So they
mean,
put
vent your
these
stomach?
right. So they put like these tubes in her stomach to try to let some air out because they thought there was air trapped in there. So that did help a little bit. That did lower her stomach a
So
little bit.
that's surgery,
Um,
right? Like that is.
yeah. So yep. So she had that done like 3 times, where they put them in and then they took them out and put different ones in different positions. So she had like 3 little surgeries, and then the day before, so she passed away on 9/11. So on 9/10, they were like, "Hey, we need to do a bigger surgery and like take her stomach out of her body and put it in like an ostomy bag and like let it sit there till she gets bigger so we can connect her stomach together." So basically, her stomach tubes, I guess you would say, right? Her digestive tract was not connected, and that's why she couldn't poop. So when you have a premature baby, you run the risk of having these types of things happen, right? They're not fully developed, as you said. So you could have a baby that maybe their one arm didn't grow as much as the other one, or in my case, her stomach didn't fully develop. So those things. So they said, "Hey, we have to do this surgery for her. I mean, it's up to you if you want to do the surgery, but basically, if we don't do the surgery, like she's probably gonna die."
Wow.
So
So you were
it
just
was a lot.
told, like, hey, we have to cut your daughter open, take her stomach
Mm,
out, put her intestines in a bag, and
yep.
she's gonna have to live that way, or she might die. Like, what?
Right.
That's a
Right.
huge
Like
concept to try and digest.
exactly. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And Jamie and I were just kind of like, if it's going to help her and get her out of pain and help her grow, we'll do it, right? Like we didn't really want to do it because we're like, oh my God, how can we have someone cut into our daughter, right? But like we really didn't feel like we had much of an option. So we did it. And she's so little, so it was so hard to see her like that. So we got to go in after the surgery. The surgery wasn't too long. They did it right in her room because they can sterilize those NICU rooms because there's only one person in there, right? So we went in and we saw her, and she looked okay. And the doctor said the surgery went well. And the plan then was, after she grows a little more and her stomach is, calmed down and less inflamed, we'll fix everything and we'll put her stomach back in and we'll be good to go, right? So that was like the basic plan in short words. So we were like feeling hopeful, right? We were feeling like, oh, okay, the surgery went well. She's doing well. Like it's gonna be okay, right? So that happened. And then the next day, 9/11, they called me at like 6 a.m. Oh, sorry, I have indigestion. They called me at 6 a.m. and they said, "Hey, so can you come in?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, what time? They're like now. I'm like, "Oh, okay. What's going on?" They're like, "We just really need to talk to you about the baby." So it was like so early. It might have even been earlier than 6 a.m. So Jamie had a cold and my mom had a cold. So I said to Jamie and I said to my mom, like, "Hey, I'm gonna drive over here, and I'll let you know what's going on, and then you guys can come over like if it's an emergency, right?" So I go in and the doctors are all in the room and the social workers in the room and the pastoral care person is in the room and I'm like, "Oh fuck. What did I walk into,
Mm-hmm.
right?" So they're like, "Yeah, your daughter is not doing well. Like, we need to do like another surgery. Like, we have to do like another mini surgery." So at this point, she's about to have her 5th surgery. She was so swollen. I mean, honestly, like I worked in the ICU in undergrad. So like I knew in my heart, like this was not good. Like she didn't look good. She's so tiny. She doesn't like when you're that tiny, you don't have a lot of space to operate and fix things, right? It's like a microscopic person. So I knew like this isn't good. Like they're gonna try their hardest, but like this doesn't look good,
Did they
right?
tell you at that point in time what was going on? Like why they needed that surgery? What was happening?
I guess it just wasn't there was an infection and like they needed to do more to fix it, right? They needed to get in there and take some stuff out that like maybe got left over or like some dead bowel, basically. So like we have to fix this or she's gonna keep getting sicker.
Oh.
I immediately called Jamie. He doesn't answer, so I send my uncle over there and he pounds on the door like the police, like, "Come on, get up, you gotta go to the hospital." So he comes to the hospital, my mom comes to the hospital, and I'm like, hey, so Jamie, like, we like have to do this surgery, or like it's our choice, right? Like we try to do the surgery and try to save her and hope it goes well, or we just let her go, like basically palliative care and let her pass, right? But like we didn't want to do either. We didn't want to make a
No,
choice.
I
We were like,
can't imagine having to choose one of those options again. So here's the third time, right? Like first time is you go into surgery now and give birth, or you're gonna
right,
die, or she's gonna die, or you're gonna die. Second
right,
time is we take her intestines out, or she's gonna die. And now here we are again we're gonna let her die, or we have this additional surgery. So you've been faced at this point so many times with
yes,
the
yeah,
oh my gosh, like the thought of, okay, my baby
yep,
is going to die and I have to choose the next decision. I have to make the next
yep,
choice.
yep, yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot, and yeah, it was very overwhelming. And mind you, I was just on bed rest for almost 4 weeks. It was just so much. I was so tired and so excited and so scared, like all the emotions at once. And like my fiance is the same way, right? Like he's tired. He hasn't been getting good sleep because he's not only worried about me, but he's worried about the baby. He's scared because he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's worried. He's excited that our baby is here, right? Like there's so many things happening at once. It's just, how do you, I don't think there's a way you can be normal in that. Like you just do what you can,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
So what happened then? So that you're faced with, do you let your baby die, or do you have another
Right.
surgery?
Right, to try to save her, right? So we decided, like, okay, we'll try this. Like, we don't have any options, right? And we, as parents, want to try to do anything we can to save our daughter and keep her healthy and happy and alive, right? So they do this second surgery, and during the surgery, I don't even think it was like 20 minutes. It was a very short amount of time. That one doctor comes on and says, "You need to come into the room. She's not gonna make
Oh
it."
my
I looked at Jamie and my mom, and I'm like, "Wait, did she just say she's not gonna make it?" And they're like, "Yeah." So we go into the room, and it was just so scary. And as soon as Jamie saw the baby, he like lost it. Like I've seen Jamie cry before, but I've never seen him that emotional. So he was like hysterical right away. And my mom was like a nurse, right? An ICU nurse for 30 something years. So she's like trying to remain calm. And I'm like, what the hell are we doing? So they're like, yeah, she's dying. Like her blood pressure is like almost nothing. Do you want us to do CPR? And I'm like, Jamie runs out of the room. The social worker goes with him to try to get him and make sure he's okay. I'm looking at the people, there's nurses and doctors and all these people in the room and my mom, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, so I was like, fine, do CPR. And like, they pressed her chest twice with their thumbs, because mind you, she's only like 1 pound, 11 ounces at this time. And I'm like, nope, stop it. Because I'm like, I personally would never, if I'm dying, like just make me comfortable and let me go. I did not want to see my daughter's little head bop up and down like that. I mean, that was the most scary and uncomfortable and upsetting scene. I mean, it replays in my mind to this day, like seeing her little head just like bop up and down. That's literally what it was. I was like, just stop. And they stop immediately. Like every single nurse and doctor runs out of the room. Not runs, but like they leave pretty quickly because I don't know. I don't know why they did that. I still feel like somewhat offended by that. And the nurse says, "Do you want to hold her while she's like on her last breath?" And I'm like, "Of course." So I hold her, and she passes. And she had a tube in her mouth, right? That's how she was breathing through a breathing tube. So I said, "Can we take that out?" And they said, "No, not yet, because she's having, like, when you die. I don't know if people know this, but when you die, your body still has these functions for a while. So like you fart, you breathe, like you get all those things out of your body." So they're like, "No, we can't take it out yet. We gotta wait until it's been a little time." So I was like, "Okay." And so I just held her, and Jamie eventually comes back in the room, and he, was so like, I mean, we were just both such a mess. I mean, that out of everything I've been through my entire life, even after that, that was the hardest thing that I ever had to go through. I mean, the worst pain. And like, you wouldn't think that would be a physical pain, but I physically was ill. Like, I hurt through and through and through. Um, so I wanted Jamie to hold her, and he was very upset because we really couldn't hold her while she was in the NICU because she was so sensitive. I at one point got to like kind of hold her with the nurse's help, but Jamie never got that chance. And so he was very upset. He's like, I don't know if I want to hold her now that she's gone, but I never got to hold her while she was living. So I think for him, it was very difficult in many ways. I mean, I know we both felt the pain, but, in a way, I think for dads, it's a different type of pain because you're looking forward to everything you can do with your daughter or your son or whatever when they're born. And then when our daughter was born, he didn't get to do any of that. He didn't even get to hold her while she was alive. So I think, for him, he was like robbed of that experience. Um, and for me, I just was so upset. I mean, I was mad at the doctors. I was mad at everyone. I was just like, get the hell away from me. Like, it was just awful. So I will say the nurse that was there when she passed away was wonderful. I mean, I can imagine these nurses probably felt so uncomfortable because I was crying so loudly and like snotting everywhere. Like, it was not a scene. So, but she was great. She was like, do you want me to take pictures of you holding her hand? Like, they did black and white photos for us, like on a little Polaroid. Like, it wasn't anything professional, but it was like perfect. They gave us all of the stuff that she had. She had like this little octopus and like a blanket. They gave us all that stuff and they said, you can stay here with your daughter as long as you want. And I said, I want to take her home. Because I don't know if you took the death and dying social work class at in grad school. Did you take
Mm-mm,
that?
no, I didn't.
So in that class, they play this video as Dr. Cacciatore. So she's like huge in grieving and loss, and they played this video for us, right? And it was called "Losing Layla." And this is long before I knew I was gonna have a baby, right? And it's all about this couple that never wanted to have kids, but they got pregnant, and when they had their daughter, she was stillborn. And I think they were in like Australia or something. They let the parents take this daughter home and keep her. I mean, she was deceased. Keep her at home for 3 days. As long as they kept her in warm water most of the time, they were allowed to take her home. Which at the time I was like, that's so weird. Why would anybody do that? But when I lost my daughter, I was like, I want to do that. I'm gonna take my baby
Yeah,
home.
you've
You
never
know,
been able to bring her home before. Like,
right, right. I was like, I'm gonna take her home and cuddle with her. I don't care if her guts are out and she passed away. Like, I want to take my baby home. And they just looked at me like I was crazy. But I'm you don't like it's just like you said, you never get to take your baby home. You don't get to hold your baby. You don't get to hear your baby cry. Like so many pieces of this, like not just losing your baby, but losing all of those experiences you were supposed to have with your child,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, I'm over here a mess. Like, tears
Me
and
too, I'm
snot.
crying.
I
Yeah, I
I
know.
can't. My baby is my
Right, everything.
world. He's my heart outside
Yeah,
of my body. And to even just imagine and listen to you describe that experience, it
yeah,
seems unlivable, like completely
yeah,
unlivable. And here you are today, like, oh
right.
my gosh, over a
Yeah,
year later. I mean, how?
yeah.
How?
Yeah, so it's hard. I mean, it's very hard. For me, when I came home, that first 2, 3 weeks, I didn't shower. I didn't talk to anybody. I barely ate. I just cried every single day, all day. I mean, Jamie was the same way. Like we spent the majority of those first 2 or 3 weeks in bed because we were just so sad. I did it was just horrible. And people will want to come over and visit and bring food, and I'm like, stay away from me. Like I just need me time with my fiance and the father of my child, and I don't want anyone else around me. And that's what I did. And I luckily for me, so I had time off like maternity leave, and then I took like FMLA leave from my job. So I was on leave from when I started bed rest on July 26th, and I didn't go back till the beginning of November. So I was off for a decent amount of time, and thank God my job allowed that to happen because I would have never been able to go back to work. Like I was supposed to go back like the middle of October or the beginning of October. I could have never done that. Like I would have never been able to function, you know?
Yeah, I can't even imagine a thought of responsibility after
Right, right.
experiencing that.
Oh, of course. And I was so like angry and bitter and like irritable, right? So if I would have went back to work, I probably would have got fired because I probably yelled at everyone. So my mom was like, hey, after 3 weeks of nonstop crying and not eating, like, hey, it might be a good idea for you to get on some antidepressants so you can continue to live. Because I really did want to die. Like, I did not want to continue living without my daughter. I mean, it's just so hard. It's so hard. And, it's interesting now to look back and know that feeling. I mean, that feeling is still so fresh. And I think that's the one thing that anybody who listens to this can take away. Your world, when you lose a child, it stops, right? Like time continues, but you're stuck in that moment, right? I think even if we had another child, I would still be stuck in that moment, right? Like I think about my daughter every single day. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't. Um, but for me, I know that hey, like I'm still here. I still have to pay these bills. I need to try my hardest to try to live the best life I can, right? COVID didn't help with that, right? Having all these things happen to me after I lost the baby didn't help with that. So it's been really difficult. Um, but I like to think to myself, how would I want my daughter to live, right? Like if I would have died instead of her and she was with her dad, what kind of life would I want for her? I would want for her to be happy. I would want for her to be successful. So I try to live how I would want Calista to live.
That's beautiful. And that is like your brain even allowing itself to go there is mind-boggling to me. But the fact that you heal yourself through that statement, like
Yeah.
how would I want her to live and how do I live for her, right?
Right. That's really where I am. And I really, I'm in like when she passed away a little bit after some people will like, it's crazy the world we live in and how small it is. There was a girl who I've never met before, but lives around the area I live in. Apparently, she was in the hospital having her son the same time I was in the hospital. And so she knew my story from being in the hospital. We have mutual friends, but I didn't know her. And, it was interesting how she, kind of came into my life and then her mother came into my life and she also has kidney disease and she's waiting to get a transplant. So, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but it's interesting how that works, right? Like your experience touches other people in so many ways. Um, and I really just, after my daughter passed, after Calista left us, I really needed to find a way to talk about it, right? To be around people who understood it and who could really get it. So I did go to a support group offered through this hospital. It was like a group of grieving parents, and only one person showed, other than myself and my mom. And she was telling us how she had like an ectopic pregnancy and lost the baby, and she was so upset. And she had a son that already, but she was so upset about this loss. And then at the end of the group, she says, "Oh, but I'm pregnant again right now." And I remember like being so angry. Like, why did you come to this group, right? Like that was a moment for me where it was hard for me to not like compare traumas,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think it's a good idea to compare trauma or compare like how people handle things because we're all different. But that moment was my moment of weakness. As soon as we got into the car, I said to my mom, why the F did she come to this group? I was so upset. Like, girl, you're already pregnant again. Did you even care about that baby you lost? It was very hard for me to not be like that, right? Like I had to take a breath and really check myself. Like even though I'm hurting and she's hurting as well, right? Because to me a loss is a loss. Whether it's a miscarriage, whether it's, a stillborn child, whether you lose your child at 1 month old like I did, whether you lose your child when your child's 30, like that's still a loss, right? You still lost a child in my eyes. Um, so I had a lot of selfish moments in the first couple of months.
I love how you describe like how human that is. Like you don't have
Right.
to judge that as a moment that is negative, right? Like it's human and as humans we go through those thoughts and we have those thoughts and if we lie to ourselves about having those thoughts, then that's a whole nother thing we got to deal with, right? Like you let yourself be angry, and anger is a part of grief. Like you lash out at the
Yeah.
world when you're hurting and you're broken, and that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It is okay. And I think that's the message, right? Like it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to F up. It's okay to like say things that are not nice sometimes, as long as you come back and you say, hey, even if it's just to yourself, I shouldn't have yelled at you like that, self. You didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
Like I think if you take that time to kind of process your stuff, like you'll feel better. So, I mean, for me, since then, what has kind of helped is I have a journal. So I write to Calista. I don't write about her, I write to her. So, I update her on things. And I wrote about, the election and all the things that are going on in our world. And I write about, how your dad's doing and what's going on with your family, what's going on with your cousins on both sides of your family. And I like to write to her as if she can read it because to me that helps kind of, in my mind, keeps our relationship,
I think that's so beautiful. And I don't know if I would have thought to do that, right? Like, you don't. So I have a belief that when you die, like your body dies, right? But it's not
Right,
you.
right.
It's not your soul. It's not your spirit that's dying. Like your
Yeah.
soul and your spirit merge with the vastness of the world, right? And
Right,
and it
right.
was just the body that goes. And so I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful that you do continue writing to her because her spirit and her soul is still in this world. Like her spirit and her soul
Right.
is this world.
I would agree with you. That's how I view it as well. I think to myself, right? My father passed away basically right after I met you. I've had several friends and family members. Jamie's grandfather's passed away. My grandmother's passed away. Both of my grandmothers. My other grandfather, his brother's passed away. We have a lot of people who have passed. So I like to think to myself, she had a welcoming committee when she left us on Earth, right? And like anybody who passes after her, gets to go hang out with my baby, right? Like my baby's in good hands, and they're teaching her how to be naughty, and they're teaching her how to have empathy, right? Like those are the things I tell myself to get through it, right? Like my friends that died when they were younger, they're teaching her the F word, they're teaching her all these, and they're showing her what good cars are, and they're showing her how to shotgun a beer, right? And her uncle Eric is teaching her Spanish. Like those are the things I tell myself to try to be okay.
Oh, I think those are beautiful thoughts.
I know, I know. I try, I think that you have to do what you have to do to let yourself live, right? Like one of the other things I did was I joined a Facebook support group, right? So I didn't really like the group I went to in person, obviously. So I decided to join this Facebook support group. This girl named Angel, she like runs it, right? She's a facilitator, one of the facilitators. And she was just awesome. She's had two losses, a girl and a boy. And she runs the group and really it's wonderful because it's interactive, right? And it's a support group for people who have lost their children regardless of age or regardless if their children ever made it earthside, right? So I love that about it. And then what I really love about it is how supportive people are and how like real they are. And the things that they say. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people on there who share how rude people are to them. I mean, I really haven't had that experience myself. Most people don't say anything to me negative, probably because they know I would like flip out. But some of these parents have experienced like some really difficult social interactions, even with their own families. Like one girl posted about how they were at her child's funeral and the child wasn't even a year old. And her father in law came up to her and said, well, you can have other kids and you'll be all right. Like how like insensitive, right? And like another person posting that, you shouldn't be that sad because you have other kids. And the response to that is, okay, so you have three kids. Tell me which one of those kids you want to give up.
It's so insensitive, right? Like, don't
Right.
minimize and tell me how I should feel, right?
Right.
Like,
Right,
ooh, I don't
100%
think
in any
anybody
situation.
listening to this podcast who hears your story, I don't think anybody could hear your story and not feel inside their like inside their bones, right? The
Right,
pain and the heartache of that experience and that loss and then be
right,
like, whatever. What? No.
right.
No.
I couldn't imagine ever saying that to someone. Like that's like saying if your grandma died or something, oh well, you had her for 90 years, get over it. Like what? I'm so sad she's gone, asshole. Like get out of here.
I one thing that it makes me think about though that I think is worth talking about is how how hard it is to know what to say, right? So if
Right.
so you were telling me a statistic and maybe you can repeat it, but how many people experience child loss or miscarriage? What
Right.
was the statistic?
So one in four women experience child loss, miscarriage, whatever that looks like. I think pregnancy and infant loss awareness, I think is October. The month of October is the awareness month. But yeah, and since I lost Calista in September, like it was weird timing, right? Because I lost her 9/11, and then October comes around and I see all these posts about like infant and child loss. And it's interesting, 1 in 4, like that's a lot of people. So if me, you, and 2 other people in a room, at least one of us has lost a child or a miscarriage or whatever. That's a lot. Like that's a lot of people.
It's so
Like,
many. And to think of the prevalence of that, the chances are
right,
high that if you yourself listening to this podcast have not had a loss yourself, the chances are very high that you know many people who have
right.
lost a child. And
And they don't talk
yeah,
about
and
it,
it's
right?
hard to know what to say. So Allie, maybe you could give us a
Right.
little advice. Like what do you want to hear, or what do we say to people who are going through that?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think in my situation, when I first started, like I said, I really didn't want to talk to anybody. But after I had some time to kind of like process and talk about it with my partner and kind of deal with that, like in my opinion, I love talking about my daughter anytime, any day. Like nothing anybody says is really gonna make me feel away. And honestly, I'm the type of person, if somebody says something weird or that I don't understand, I'll just ask them like, how do you mean? What do you mean? Like what are you saying? Right? Like let's walk through this together. Because like I love talking about my daughter. I think the more people talk about her, the more she lives, right? Like she lives on, people don't forget her. Because I think for me that was a big concern I had. Like, I still had a child, right? She lived. Like, even if she didn't live and she was stillborn, she was still my child, right? Like, I'm still a mom. My partner is still a father to my daughter, Calista, right? She's alive. And, people say their name, right? Like, that's a big thing in this pregnancy, infant loss, like, world. Like, say their name. Don't stop saying their name, right? But really, my advice would be if you know that person personally, like, just ask them, like, hey, like, what do you want? Like, do you want to talk about your child? Do you not want to talk about your child? Like, what are you okay with? And they can tell you, like, hey, I'm not okay with that right now, right? Or whatever. Like, it's up to the person. Some people probably don't want to talk about it. When I lost Calista, I learned a lot of people lost their children or lost, had a miscarriage or stillborn that I never knew about. Like, I never knew they were ever even pregnant. Like, the amount of messages that I got on Facebook, Instagram, text messages, emails of women that I know and I've known for years telling me, hey, I experienced a very similar situation. I had a friend that I went to high school with who wrote me and said, hey, I just had a miscarriage at 16 weeks. That's pretty far along. And your story, you posting your story, has given me strength to talk about mine. And
Mm.
so really, I feel that calling, right? Like, I feel like I will never stop talking about my daughter because A, I love her and I want to keep her alive. But B, like, I want other women, other men, other people, him, they, her, whatever. I want them to be able to feel empowered to share their story and talk about it. And my honest advice is if people say rude things to you, tell them to piss off. Like, this isn't your life. It's not your child. So keep it moving, buddy. Like, push along, push along.
I love your
Like, it's just,
authenticity, Allie.
I gotta keep it real. I have to keep it real because I just think there's no reason we shouldn't talk about this. When I went to the doctor, I went to my PCP like probably a month and a half after I lost a baby, and the lady that was at the front desk, probably like in her late 50s, early 60s, said to me, "Yeah, my mother lost my first sibling, but she never talked about it. I never knew about it until I told her that you lost your child." So 60 some years later, your mother finally told you that she experienced that loss. And the mother told her, back in the day when we lost children, we just never talked about it. We didn't even tell our husbands.
Wow, like
I,
the taboo, like nature of
right.
this is mind
Yes.
blowing.
I can't imagine holding that in and not talking about it with anyone. Like, how do you not become bitter and angry? And like, I don't know how people could live like that, but I know that they do, right? There's plenty of people out there who probably would never talk about losing their child,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, my feeling and my empowerment is that I think we should talk about it. And if people aren't comfortable talking about it, like they could write about it to themselves, to their child, like get it out, man. When you hold that stuff in, it festers and it turns into negative or like gloomy gray energy. Who wants that, right? Like that's not going to help you in your healing. Like you are the one that is in control of your healing and your power and your direction in life. Will you have setbacks? Of course, you'll have setbacks, but you have the power. You're able to do that.
Preach, girl. Wow. I feel like you've dropped so much knowledge today around how to be in the driver's seat of your healing journey and how to appreciate and be with the feelings and the deepness of the hurt or the sorrow or the pain. And then also how to keep the spirit of your loved one alive after they're gone, right? And so, I
Yes,
mean, something that you've taught me here today, and I feel it so deep in my soul, is it's writing and speaking and living as if Calista is still here today, right? Keeping her alive
yes,
keeps you alive. Living your life for her so that you can every single day wake up and do the hard things because you're doing the hard things. Like it doesn't get
yes,
easier, right? It's still hard, but you're finding
yes,
a
every
way to be
day.
strong in that journey.
100%. And I think, in any loss, especially child loss, you have to find what works for you to keep you going. Because if you don't, you will stay in that dark place and you will stay down there. Like you will not rise above that until you take it upon yourself to move forward. Because you could have any drugs in the world, you could have, millions of dollars. But if in your heart and your soul and your body, your energy's off and you're not trying to control you, it's not going to go well.
Mm.
That's not a doctor, but I am me, and that's my experience. And hopefully, people listening, or people listen and tell someone about it, can take something away from this, even if it's that I curse too much. Hopefully, you take something away from this.
Oh, I love your potty mouth. Oh, Allie, thank you so much for sharing. I want to give you the opportunity to plug in a little bit about a resource that's mattered to you throughout this journey, and how others can seek out connection to resources that are going through this.
Yeah, so I live in Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, there is I guess, support group type agency called Sweet Grace Ministries. It's sweetgraceministries.com. And when I lost Calista, one of my coworkers knew about this agency. I never had heard of them. And she sent out an email to everyone I work with. And I work for a pretty large company, and they donated money to give to this company, Sweet Grace Ministries, so that they could make a basket to send to families enduring stillbirth or neonatal death in various hospitals. So if you lose a child, they will take one of these baskets that has been created in honor of your child and donate that to someone else who is experiencing that. So my coworkers did that for me in honor of Calista. They put this basket together and then they donate that basket to a mother that's been through a similar experience as you. And I think that is such a wonderful resource for mothers who go through this, because when you lose your child, like having anyone give you any type of love and positivity, even if it's not words, I think is a beautiful thing. The other thing I would say is outside of Grace Ministry, you can donate your breast milk. So if you can donate it to the hospital, or there's organizations that will take it and you can donate it to people. Um, I donated mine to someone locally because she was unable to breastfeed because she was on certain medications, and I had a lot of milk because I had been pumping right since the day Calista died, and continued to pump into the end of October, beginning of November. So I pumped for a while. So I had a lot of breast milk. So I donated it to her and her daughter. And for me, it was hard to do that in a way, because I was like, oh my God, a piece of me and a piece of Calista is leaving. But at the same time, like I said earlier, I want to live a life that I would want her to live and for her to be proud of. So I donated that to this woman, and her child, because I felt like, my daughter can't have this nutrition and this health and this positive stuff, right, to keep her alive and thriving. So let me give that to someone who can, and someone who can live a good life, right? So those are the two things that I really, would like to promote or give back to people. I'm sure in other states they have programs like Sweet Grace Ministries. They are in Southern Pennsylvania, in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. So even if you lived in Maryland or Virginia, I'm sure those areas they would work with people who live there. If you live further away, I'm sure they could try to connect you with someone. I mean, I am amazed at how word of mouth works, right? How people know about these things that other people have no clue about, and it just gets passed along. So, I said it over and over. Talk about it. Say their name. Live it.
Mm.
So that's my ending piece.
I love it, Allie. And I just want to, I feel compelled to share. So your what you just shared about continuing to pump your breast milk after Calista died and donating that to a local mom just hit my heart in such a big way. I when I gave birth to Emery, he we thought he could suckle and latch and get
Right.
milk well. And we learned at 4 days old, he was like, he was a crying mess. He would never stop crying. I was in so much pain from breastfeeding.
Oh.
We went to a lactation consultant and realized that
Hmm.
he was not getting any milk and he had not gotten any milk for
Oh my
4 days.
goodness.
And so she
Right.
taught me at that point how to pump, and I had to syringe feed him with like one of
Oh.
those nasal, like those tubes that go up his nose. We used it on my finger and put breast milk in a
Oh.
syringe. And every time he suckled properly, we would like give him some milk to teach him how to suckle. And he went to physical therapy and he went to feeding therapy. We had the lactation consultant, and we went to something called craniosacral therapy to support like the formation of his mouth and his head. And throughout all of this, I didn't produce much milk, and so he was on the bottle. Like he once he graduated and he was big enough to move from like that syringe, we got him on a special bottle and continued to try to breastfeed every single day. And he just couldn't transfer any milk from me, and my supply
Right.
decreased. And there was
Of
a
course.
coworker
Yeah.
at work that had shared with me about like getting donated breast milk, and I found through a line this beautiful, wonderful soul. Her name is Kat. She had her third child, and she produced so much milk. And I would pump as much as I could, but literally I would pump for like 40 minutes and get an ounce. And
Oh
I
my
know,
God.
and I would pump religiously. Like if I was, I'd be pumping and feeding him, and then he'd be sleeping, and then like 30 minutes later, I'd start pumping again, and I could
You're like,
not.
I want this milk to
It
come
would not
out.
come out. I was
Yeah.
on supplements to increase
Oh.
my supply, and I was on oxytocin to help, like, increase my letdown, and, I couldn't I mean,
Nothing.
I still pumped past a year, like, even though I got nothing, I did not give up, but I had to
Good for
get
you.
supplemented breast milk, and Kat gave me some supplemented
Right.
breast milk, and so did, another mom at the preschool I was at, and it made me feel so good to know that as determined, and I am strong-willed and stubborn, and as determined as I was to make it work, if it wasn't going to be my breast milk, it was going to be somebody's breast milk, and I was going to give my little guy the very best possible. And I was
Right.
very strict on, like, I don't wanna introduce certain things before the age of 1, and we ended up having to supplement with some formula, which is absolutely okay, like, fed is best. But,
Yeah.
that journey for me was so painful, and so at the end of that, when I finished pumping, I was like, "All right, I'm sending an ounce of this off to this company that, they take your breast milk, and it's this beautiful thing for mamas," and then other people hear this, and they're like, "That's weird." But they take your breast milk, and they dehydrate it, and they turn it into jewelry, and I have these gorgeous
Yes.
earrings, from my journey of pumping to try and feed my son that I cherish
Yes.
so, so much as a piece of that
Yes.
journey. But I
I love that. You got me one too, and I thought that was. I know. I agree. Other people probably think that is so. Like you have your breast milk and earrings, a ring, a necklace, whatever. Like, look, lady, I'm gonna wear this breast milk proudly because I worked for
Yes,
that.
and it symbolizes something so profound in my life. And to hear, I love you so much. To hear that you continued to pump after Callista died and you continued to nourish other babies. Like your
Oh,
soul
forever.
is so beautiful and so strong, and you're such a life giver, Allie. Like so
Thank
inspiring.
you. I appreciate it. And it, I've learned in life. I'm 33 years old. That if nothing else in the world, if I can make one person's life a little bit easier, I would like to do that because there's enough suffering in the world, right? People have enough negative or like overwhelming things happening. So if I can do anything to help one person, even if it's for 2 minutes to breathe, like I want to do that. I want to make sure people are okay,
Mm,
Like I think we need more of that in the world. We need more people that actually care and not people that pretend they care because they're nosy or they feel like they have to pretend to care so that you don't hate them or something. Like be genuine,
yeah.
help when that's my opinion. I know not everybody feels that way. Some people probably think, "Hey, you're a sucker," but I don't care what you think if
No,
it
it's
helps
strength. And
enough for
yeah,
me.
that's a lot to live by, Allie, right? Like, we
Yep,
are sent in, I mean, I believe this. We are sent to this earth on a mission and a reason and for a purpose. And it's not to be a singular organism living in independence and isolated from the world. Like, we are designed to be social, connected beings
for
that
sure.
feed each other, nourish, and help each other grow. And
Hmm.
the the
Exactly.
fact that you do that, your baby died and you continued to nourish other babies, like, it just speaks to your
Yep.
soul, my dear. I love you so much.
Oh. And honestly, I would have pumped even longer if I could have, but I had to go back to work, and I was like, I am not pumping in the closet with the vax machine. So,
I don't know how many different places I pumped. I used to literally, this sounds crazy. I would drive and I would be pumping while I'm driving to work. I'd get to work, I'd work for an hour, I'd close my door, I'd pump in my office. I'd stick a chair in front of the door because it didn't lock. And I was like, nobody come in here. I'd be on
right? Don't touch me.
meetings
Don't look
and
at
I'm
me.
like muting myself so they don't hear like the pump in the background.
Right. It's making all that noise.
It was such a
Don't look over
journey.
here. Look away.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, goodness.
So,
Yes.
so amazing. Well, thank you so much, Allie, for sharing your journey with us and inspiring us and helping shed light into how people can experience such deep loss and continue to live and find joy again
Yes.
and find hope again. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for having me here. And I appreciate you letting me share my story.
Thank you so, so much for tuning in today. I hope you are feeling inspired and empowered in your own healing journey. I know that many of you listening might be reflecting on your own stories that you may feel called to share. If so, please reach out to me at dinat@empowertoheal.com. That's DENAT@empower2heal.com. Or drop me a message through my Instagram handle at empower2heal. I would love to connect with you and learn about your journeys so that we can hopefully continue to spread these powerful life lessons on empowering ourselves to heal. My contacts will also be linked in the show notes below so that you can easily find me. We are so eager to start a movement in showcasing the many ways we can heal. And you can be part of this movement too by capturing images and tagging them #empower2heal on Instagram. We look forward to seeing all the ways that you are empowered to heal. I love you, beautiful souls, and thank you so, so much. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and review.